How's it going out there? This is Feed Your Mind, and so there's books that are missing from the Bible. Now, when I first discovered this information, I assumed it was the Roman Catholics who removed these books because the most popular Bible is the King James Bible, and that's like a Roman Catholic book. And also in this King James Bible, they remove the Father's name and replaced it with the Son. Basically, they say the Lord, and instead of the Tetragrammaton, which is YHWH, which is the name of the Father, and the Lord is actually referred to as the Son. So I was like, okay, so there's missing books in the Bible, and the King James is the most popular Bible, so obviously it's probably the Roman Catholics who were responsible for this. But after doing further research, it turns out that it was the Protestants who removed the books out of the Bible. So then I started thinking, well, that's not as surprising. I mean, I was like, okay, so this makes sense because the Protestants aren't squeaky clean either, because a lot of the pagan holidays are in the church still. A lot of the symbolism, pagan symbolism, is in the church still. And, like the cross, I mean, there's evidence to suggest that Jesus did not die on a cross. It's definitely up for debate. It's not like a 100% for sure thing he was on a cross, so I'm like, okay, so that makes sense because the Protestants aren't, they're not squeaky clean either. I mean, I usually give, the Roman Catholics more of my skepticism. But yeah, this reminds me that, okay, the Protestants, have, I can't just say the Protestants are 100% on top of everything. So I'm like, okay, so the Protestants were the ones who removed these books. So a lot of people say it was Lutheran. What's this guy? I think his name was Luther. He was like one of the most popular Protestants. And so a lot of people say he was the one responsible. But then I'm starting to think like, okay, well, if the Protestants are responsible for removing these books, then why does the King James Version also remove these books? So I look at the King James Version kind of like a Catholic Bible, so I'm thinking like, why did they remove the books too? So now it's looking like, it's kind of like a, what you would call a conspiracy, right? Because it's like two or more people come together to remove things, to work together to hide and remove things. So it looks like they're both, from my point of view, it looks like they're both involved in this removal of these books. So the mainstream reasoning for why these books were removed is that the Protestants rejected these writings. But when I did further research, it looks like a lot of the early Christians had these in their Bibles. Like, it looks like up until about 1800, the 1800s, it looks like a lot of Bibles had these extra books, these apocryphal books. So it's possible that some of these Bibles had these apocryphal books in them, so most Christians were reading them up until fairly recently. You see how things can just change by decisions being made for us. Like, most Christians are like, nope, you can't read those. You can't read those books at all. But if they were in most Bibles up until about a couple hundred years ago, then is that just the attitude that we've developed about these apocryphal books? One thing that kind of upset me when I did my research on this whole thing is, I'm looking up like how many extra books are there? How many apocryphal books are there? They'll be like, well, looks like there's about 13 or 14 apocryphal books. And then you do further and further, you got to really dig deep. It turns out, well, there could be up to 100 apocryphal books. It's like you listen to these biblical scholars on the subject, they'll be like, yeah, about 14 of them. Then it turns out they're just talking about the Old Testament apocryphal books. It's like, when I'm saying apocryphal, I'm not just asking you about the Old or the New Testament. I want to know how many apocryphal books are there. They're like, oh, well, in the New Testament, there's probably about 80 New Testament apocryphal books. It's like, okay, well, why didn't you just say that, in the first place? Okay, so there's about 100 apocryphal books then. There's about 14 in the Old Testament and about 80 in the New. So yeah, let's just, why are we, differentiating between like Old and New Testament? Like when I'm asking the question, how many apocryphal books, I want to know, in the modern Bible, total, how many apocryphal books are missing. So the reasoning for a lot of these books that are missing is, well, they said they were rejected by the Protestants. Some of them they didn't agree with. It seems like the reasoning varies. It doesn't seem. Some say it was a matter of opinion of this Luther guy. Like he didn't like what some of these books were saying, so he removed them. And that sounds like a personal opinion, but Christians would be like, well, he was probably ordained by God to make these decisions. But others might say, well, that was just his opinion. But, there was like criteria, I guess, where they were saying like some of these books they're saying, well, the authors didn't match up. Like some of these books weren't referenced by other books. They have a lot of reasonings. Some of them, like I said, they just don't agree with what's in them. And, like when I've read a lot of these apocryphal books, I mean, they do go deep into stuff. Like a lot of them actually go deep into like discussions with demons and like names of demons and discussions. Like, so what I'm thinking is, was it that the modern Bible is more mainstream? Was it like, they say this new Justice League movie is like 4 hours long versus the theatrical version, which is about 2 hours long. So a lot of editing, they had to do to make the movie more appealing to the mainstream audience. So, and then the real fans want to watch the 4 hour long movie because they want to see all the stuff that was left out of the script that they didn't get to see. And so is that kind of like what happened where Luther was inspired to remove these books because just to make it more of a neat package for the general public and really focus on the main theme of all of the books, which comes down to the salvation of mankind through Jesus. So maybe like they just wanted to narrow it down, because like a lot of the first books of the New Testament are all pretty much the same story, just from different points of views. So it's real solid stuff, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's just like, the apostles' experience with Jesus, personal firsthand experience, and they all had their point of, it's like they all got a chance to say what they saw from their point of view. And then with the apocryphal books, it goes deeper. So it's like I could kind of see how they could decide, how Luther could have been like, okay, well, let's remove a lot of these extra books that kind of go off into the weeds. Let's leave those books hidden, from the general public. So I can kind of see where he was coming from there. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think, like, do you agree that is that like a good reasoning? Should have they removed those books just to keep it more of a mainstream book where people can pick it up and get through it and really understand the overall message of the Bible? I mean, I can kind of get with that. And then if you want to do your deeper research, you can get into the Apocryphal. I just don't like it when they try to say, like, these are bad books, like, because for my research, it just seems like the books were in the Bible, like, up until a few hundred years ago. So they couldn't be bad then if they were, if at one time a lot of those books were in the Bible. That means they're not bad. I mean, one of my favorite apocryphal books was Adam and Eve, the book of Adam and Eve, and it goes into detail, like, about what happened in the garden and after the garden, and it goes into like deep detail about it. And then there's the books of, I think it was the book of Thomas or something, where it discussed Jesus' early years. That was a incredible read. I mean, hearing all about the missing years of Jesus, I really want to see if there's a apocryphal book about the early years of Moses, because he was like raised by Egyptians. That sounds, we're going to probably be, I'll probably be doing a video on that at a later date, because that's pretty interesting that Moses was raised by Egyptians. To me, I'd like to see if there's a book that goes into detail about his time in Egypt before he got kicked out of Egypt for, what he did. He had attacked somebody in self-defense. And so I would like to know about his, details about his upbringing in Egypt. But yeah, so I mean, to me, from what I've heard from a lot of biblical researchers, well, not from a lot, but from some biblical researchers, they said that they didn't realize that, some of them are saying, like, they didn't know it was that much, like, discrepancies in how it was decided to remove these books. Like, some just thought it was just like, oh, they just removed them for this reason or that reason. But then after doing deeper research, some of these biblical scholars realized that, it wasn't just like as cut and dry as just, some of the criteria is kind of like, it wasn't so cut and dry, like, these books didn't make it for this reason. No, some of the reasoning seems like it was more like, not so sure why they removed these books. I know a lot of these apocryphal books talk about the firmament and describe a world, describe Earth as something very different than what science is telling us. A lot of these apocryphal books will, especially the book of Enoch, which is another one of my favorite apocryphal books. So, like, it will describe the Earth and the sun and everything, and describe it in ways where it's obviously not heliocentric. So the final book of the Bible that we have, the modern book of today, is what you call the canon. They call canon meaning, like, it's the approved books of the Bible. And then after doing my research on these apocryphal books, though, I don't know, like, how they really confirmed the authors of some of these Bibles or some of these books. So it's not clear if, their criteria for confirming the authors of these books, or if any of our, because in our canon, the modern canon has what was it, 66 books or something? Interesting. But our modern book, our modern Bible attributes a lot of the, pretty much every writing to a particular biblical character. Like Moses wrote the first, 4 books or something, and Solomon wrote some stuff, and they said the Wisdom of Solomon, the Apocryphal book, isn't even written by Solomon. So that's the type of stuff we run into. And then I gotta wonder, like, what was their criteria for confirming who wrote what, though? So anyways, what are your thoughts on the Apocryphal books? Do you think that they should have left them in, or do you think that they did the right thing by removing them? Me personally, like I said, I get it. I think it's kind of like the right thing, because you can't have especially if there's 100 apocryphal books, like you can't have the Bible would be like multiple books. It would have to have been like book 1, book 2, book 3, probably, or something like that, to get, to own the Bible. If there's that many books, but maybe some of them could have been left in. I don't know. Do you think like Luther did the right thing? Also, some people might say that it wasn't Luther and it wasn't the Protestants that removed these books. There's a very few skeptics that will say, nope, it wasn't the Protestants. It was actually the Roman Catholics, who I originally suspected was responsible for this. So that was interesting when I came across a few, skeptics who aren't going with the mainstream narrative about who removed these books. They all say it was the Protestants and Luther, but then some are saying, nope, it was the Roman Catholics who removed these books and hid them. That would make more sense to me. That's who I originally suspected. So, and then, like I said, when it comes down to it, a lot of these biblical scholars admit that, they don't really know much about all the reasoning behind the removal of these books. They'll actually admit that, like, a lot of speculation is at play here when reasoning why these books were removed. And, there's, like I said, there's official mainstream narratives about why, but other biblical scholars will reject those mainstream narratives about why they removed them. Some will say they don't agree. They think it was other reasoning. Some will say they think it was the Roman Catholics. So, most people say it was the Lutherans, the Protestants. So that's the mainstream narrative, is that it was the Protestants. But, but like I said, what do you think about all this? After doing all my research, I really have to say that I believe that it's okay to, like, I personally read them, because you get a lot more insight on a lot of these Bible stories. And I just think that it's I very much enjoyed reading them. It was just unbelievable how they could have like all these missing pieces of the stories. That's kind of like how they did with Star Wars, right? It was like the movie came out, the first 3, and then all of a sudden there's backstories, and there's another 3 movies that came out that go into deeper detail about other areas. It's like they're copying the Bible almost. Like, it's like that method of just expanding on ideas and expanding on character development. It's like, wow. So I was very impressed that the Bible can do that too. It's like the Bible has these stories that go into deep detail, like about the giants and the Sheol, the underworld, all types of stuff. But the only thing is, some of these books you do got to probably be cautious about, because I think some of these books might not be like official books. Some of these books are really like, I think they found some pretty disturbing statements made in some of these books. So you can't just say all of them are, I guess, okay to read. The book of Judas goes into detail. Like, I think they're saying like something like, he had to do what he had to do, because like, if he didn't do that, then, you know, that wouldn't have happened to Jesus. So it was like he had to take, you know, he took one for the team. I don't know, like there's all types of interesting concepts and ideas in these apocryphal books, and I'm doing a little more research on this stuff. If I find anything else new out, I'll let you guys know. But let me know what you think about these apocryphal books. Do you think that we should be reading them or not? And do you agree with the mainstream narrative about why they removed them? Or do you think they should have stayed in the Bible? Or do you think it was okay, you know, like, do you agree with them being removed? So yeah, let me know all that. And also, if you want to donate to the channel, I'll leave links. If you want to check out my other channels, I'll leave links also to my social media, my Feed Your Mind store, all types of links in the comment section. If you chip in at least $1, you get access to secret videos, early releases, and sneak peeks. Plus, you're helping me keep Feed Your Mind online, and you help me continue to do what I do. So thank you for all the support. Thank you to all the patrons out there. And thank you to all the subscribers, and thank you for everybody that leaves a like button or leaves a like on these videos and a comment. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you for tuning in. Signing off.